June 15th, 2021. During my first week at Outpost Aurora, I faced an unsettling cycle of sleepless nights and sleepless days. This was a result of the unyielding Arctic sun that refused to set during the Alaskan summer. It was challenging to acclimate to my tiny quarters, forcing myself to rely on the blackout blinds and my wristwatch to keep track of time, instead of the ever-present sun. I had willingly traded the relative normalcy of Anchorage 19-hour summer days for this endless disorientation, all in pursuit of my doctoral field research on the impacts of climate change on remote Inuit communities. Outpost Aurora, a climate research facility, accommodated around 30 inhabitants, a diverse group of scientists, researchers, and a handful of maintenance and support staff. As an anthropologist, I was somewhat of an oddity among the geologists, climatologists, and biologists who dominated this research team. We got along well enough, but there was a clear professional disconnect. Their world revolved around weather data, rocks, and polar flora and fauna, while mine centered around the stories and experiences of indigenous people. Being the only Inuit-speaking researcher in this remote expanse of northern Alaska, I felt a profound obligation to chronicle and protect the rich oral traditions of the local communities before they were lost to the shifting snow and ice. I felt like I was straddling a fault line. I was the sole link between these isolated villages and the outside world. On this particular evening, I'm engrossed in transcribing my interview with Katak, an elderly self-proclaimed shaman boasting about harpooning a seal the size of a walrus, when a soft, slightly raspy voice broke my concentration. "Dr. Kaluk?" Looking up from my work, I met the gaze of a young woman at the far end of my table. Her face was brightened by a warm smile. Her luminous blue eyes shimmered with an indescribable intensity, and a tangle of auburn hair escaped from under her woolen beanie. "I'm sorry?" I replied, removing my headphones. "You're Dr. Noah Kaluk, right?" she repeated. "Well, technically I'm still a PhD candidate," I sheepishly clarified. "Oh, my apologies, PhD candidate Noah Kaluk," she said, her tone dancing on the line of playfulness and sarcasm. "I'm field technician Rebecca McKenzie, but you can call me Becca." Her joke garnered a genuine chuckle from me. "And you can call me Noah," I said, extending my hand. She shook my hand. "Taiku," she explained, clearly pronouncing the Inuit word for welcome. Intrigued, I asked, "You speak Inuit?" "Just that, and ma imwak kwa," she admitted, shrugging. Struggling to attain my laughter, I corrected her. "Becca, you just said you're a musk ox." Her cheeks turned a bright shade of red. "The village children told me it meant nice to meet you," she mumbled. "I hope you didn't say that to a lot of people," I chuckled. "Just to about a half a dozen villagers, and to the site director," she admitted, her face paling in realization. "You said that to Dr. Anderson?" I asked, aghast. "Oh dear." "Yeah, but I don't think she knew what it meant either," Becca responded, which brought me to fits of laughter, in which she soon joined. "Anyway, Noah," she started, as she pulled up a chair and sat across from me, "I saw your name on the roster for tomorrow's ice core sampling trip. It's your first one, isn't it? Yeah, I said, the words stuck in my throat as I pictured the steep, ice-covered mountain range I had agreed to climb. You don't climb much, I'm guessing, she asked. I've done a fair bit of hiking and mountain climbing, but nothing on this scale, I confessed. I'm Inuit, we mostly stick to the lowland coast. Peering out the window, my gaze fell on the towering peaks dominating the horizon. The mountain we were to ascend was known to the locals as the Den of the Dead, an ominous title for anything, let alone a treacherous peak covered in ancient shifting glaciers. The name was part of an old Inuit legend, one of many tales I'd collected from the village elders. The story painted a picture of vengeful spirits purportedly inhabiting these glaciers, ready to wreak havoc on anyone audacious enough to disrupt their icy abode. While I didn't believe in spirits, the hazardous crevices and unpredictable weather that awaited us felt like wrathful spirits in their own right. Becca could sense my apprehension. It's alright to be nervous, but don't worry, Dr. Anderson wouldn't send you out on your own. You've been placed in good hands. Whose hands exactly? I asked skeptically. Her grin widened. Mine, actually. Raising an eyebrow, I wasn't sure whether to feel comforted or more concerned. Yours? What? Don't look at me like that. Becca protested playfully. I got plenty of experience. No offense, Becca, but you look like you just stepped out of an undergrad class. She laughed at my comment, but I noticed the pride in her eyes. Looks can be deceiving. I've navigated those passes dozens of times. I can handle both of us. So, what's it like, being up there in the glaciers? I asked. It's an incredible experience. When you hold an ice core in your hands, it's like you're touching history, feeling the Earth's past in your palms, she explained. Well, when you put it that way, I said, finding her description oddly relatable. I'm almost looking forward to it. That's the spirit, she exclaimed, clapping me on the back. Her laughter echoed throughout the mess hall, cutting through the tension that had settled there. June 16th, 2021. The morning was a whirlwind of activity. By 5 a.m., the common area was already bustling. Our departure from the base was anything but a silent affair. Instead, it was a cacophony of barking huskies and buzzing chatter, filled with last-minute discussions about the plan and route. Our team of 6, clad in heavy winter gear, was busy loading equipment onto the dog sleds. The sun glared in the cloudless sky, its blinding light reflecting off the snow and ice, making it seem as if we were about to journey across a white, unending desert. The air was palpable with a strange blend of excitement, anxiety, and a touch of the unknown. As I loaded my pack onto a sled, Becca approached, dressed in snow pants and a parka, her face framed by a fur-trimmed hood. She resembled an Arctic explorer from a bygone era. She methodically inspected the gear I had packed to ensure everything was present and in working order. Leaning in, she imparted some final words of advice. Keep close, stay focused, and remember, it's not a race. The goal is to get there and back safely. Drawing confidence from her words, I nodded. As we began the journey, there was an eerie calm, the hustle and bustle of the camp fading into the vast icy expanse. The first few hours of our trek were uneventful, the terrain mostly flat. Each sled accommodated 2 people, with Becca and I paired together. While the sled dogs forged ahead, we passed the time making small talk and trading stories about life back at Outpost Aurora. I told her about my disconnect with my colleagues. Becca said she understood, confessing to me that she was much lower on the pecking order than her confident demeanor the previous night might have suggested, which explained why she was assigned the task of looking after the new guy. Despite the teasing tone, there was a hint of relief in her voice, an appreciation for having someone to talk to during these long, perilous excursions. As the day progressed, the snow-swept landscape morphed into steep rocky inclines. The dogs pulled valiantly, their breath fogging in the chill air. A torrent of awe and anxiety warmed within me as I surveyed the brutally beautiful landscape around us. I was reminded of the tales from my grandmother's childhood, how the indomitable Inuit people had traversed a polar wasteland spanning a greater distance than New York to Los Angeles, and yet managed to carve out a life for themselves. I felt as though I were walking in the footsteps of my ancestors. Arriving at the foot of the mountain, the daunting process of setting up the drills unfolded. These colossal machines, disassembled and transported on sleds, had to be carefully put together again in these unforgiving conditions. The team had the monumental task of drilling a mile into the mountainside to reach ice that hadn't been disturbed in hundreds of thousands of years. Each layer of ice was a snapshot of Earth's climate at that point of time, capturing tiny bubbles of air, volcano ash, pollen, dust, and even microscopic life forms. Watching Becca maneuver her way around the equipment, coordinating with the others, it was clear she was in her element. Unlike the rest of the team, my expertise wasn't required for drilling. Instead, I was on a different mission. The rapidly melting glaciers had started uncovering secrets that were long hidden beneath their icy surfaces. Fragments of ancient cultures that had been engulfed by the glaciers over centuries were now resurfacing. It was my job to recover and catalog any artifacts we discovered. As the drilling continued, my eyes were drawn towards a cave not too far from our location, shielded by an overhanging ledge of ice and snow. It seemed untouched by time. "Becca!" I called, catching her attention. I pointed towards the cave. Her eyes followed my pointing finger, and her eyebrows rose slightly. "You want to go in there?" "Caves are a treasure trove of ancient relics," I explained. As there was a lull in the drilling, she decided to join me in exploring the cave. Upon entering the cave, the first thing I noticed was the cold, which was even more intense than outside. A shiver ran down my spine, not entirely from the temperature. My eyes struggled to adjust to the darkness, the meager light from our flashlights barely illuminating the frozen cavern. I swept my light across the jagged cave floor, searching for any hint of an ancient bonefish hook or an obsidian spearhead. Suddenly, Becca's voice echoed through the cave. "Noah! Over here!" My heart skipped a beat as Becca's urgent voice pierced through the stillness of the cave. I hurried toward her, my flashlight trembling in my hand. As I approached, I saw her kneeling over what appeared to be a body slumped against the cave wall. My mind spun with questions. Had someone been stranded here recently? Were they in need of help? I attempted to lift the body for a clearer view, but it was frozen in place. "Hey, can you give me a hand?" I asked. Yeah, sure," she replied with hesitation in her voice. We each took an arm and pulled. The icicles anchoring the body to the cave floor broke with a crack. A gasp caught in my throat as we were greeted by the macabre sight of a woman. Her face was an eerie porcelain mask, lined with intricate blue-black tattoos that curled from her forehead around her eyes down to her chin. Her jet-black eye sockets stared back at us, frozen forever in an expression of terror. Her mouth was half open in a silent scream, her teeth sharp and unnaturally white against her frostbitten skin. The lights from our flashlights danced across her body, revealing the tiny form huddled in her arms. A child, perfectly preserved in the ice, its body as desecrated as the woman's. The little one's face was a haunting mimicry of its mother's, frozen in time, like a delicate porcelain doll. Recoiling in shock, Becca let out a small gasp, covering her mouth with her hand, while I sat paralyzed, my mind grappling with the sight before me. I didn't recognize the tattoo patterns on her, and her clothing didn't match any styles known to the Inuit people. The attire suggested a culture far older than I was familiar with. My flashlight caught the glint of something metallic. Next to the mother and child was a knife with an ornate handle made of ivory. The blade itself was crudely crafted, like it was beaten into shape with stones, and had a black tint to it. I knew that pre-contact Inuit tribes only had one source of metal for their tools: iron ore, extracted from meteorites. I think there are more, Becca said, her voice trembling. She pointed deeper into the cave. Slowly, our lights revealed more bodies, each in varying states of preservation. Some were mere skeletons, the eyes having worn their flesh away over the centuries, while others were as impeccably preserved as the woman and child. A shared feature among them was the hollow crevices where their eyes used to be. As I shone my flashlight along the icy cave wall, it revealed a sequence of well-preserved cave drawings. They told a disturbing tale of people, similar to the bodies we discovered, chased by terrifying shadowy figures. Their fear echoed the eternal screams on the frozen faces we'd found. The final scenes showed the people in a cave, horrifyingly similar to our surroundings, with the ominous figures looming over them. A chill ran through in my veins that had nothing to do with the frigid temperature. "What do you think happened to them?" Becca asked, sounding like she didn't want to know the answer. "It's difficult to say without a thorough analysis," I rationalized. "Disease? Starvation? Perhaps they were caught in a snowstorm and succumbed to exposure." "Exposure?" she asked. The word alone seemed to have disturbed her more than the bodies themselves. Her naturally light complexion turned a shade paler. Before I could respond, the piercing sound of Becca's radio crackled into life, shattering the quietness of the cave.
"Becca, do you copy? This is Dr. Ken. We got an issue here."
The voice of the team lead came through. Becca quickly unclipped the radio, her fingers fumbling in her haste. "This is Becca. We're in the cave. What's wrong?"
"One of the drills ruptured a gas deposit, releasing some sort of unknown toxic substance. Get out of there immediately!"
Dr. Khan's voice held a note of urgency we'd never heard before. Without a moment's hesitation, we scrambled to our feet and bolted towards the entrance of the cave. Even before reaching the mouth of the cave, an intense chemical odor replaced our familiar scent of the tundra. The moment we stepped out of the cave, the air hit us like a freight train. A nauseating stench of rotten eggs clawed at our senses, threatening to pull us under. The once clear sky was now a pale, sickly blue, eerily reminiscent of an aurora borealis gone awry. The sun, previously a harsh white spotlight, was now a dull, jaundiced orb looming overhead. A symphony of distressed barks and whines and howls echoed through the air. Our sled dogs, visibly affected by the sudden change, they tossed their heads, pulling at their leads in their panic, their tails tucked between their legs. We sprinted towards the drill site, where the rest of our team was already dealing with the unfolding chaos. Amid the disorder, I noticed a figure curled up in the snow away from the rest, convulsing uncontrollably. As I drew nearer, I recognized Erica, one of our geologists, clutching her stomach. She was vomiting blood, her skin a ghostly shade of grey. Our medic, Lucas, was already at her side, trying to comfort her. While frantically relaying instructions into his radio, his normally steady voice was laced with an undercurrent of panic. His eyes met mine, a haunted look in them that sent a chill down my spine. "We need to get her back to the base now," he said, his gaze flitted towards the sickly glow in the sky. "She inhaled a lot of whatever that is. She's not the only one. We all have."